Your tweets have gotten you over 150,000 followers on X. You're a successful ghostwriter and you write an incredible email newsletter that generates a lot of sales for you. But most people don't know you are actually a best-selling author in India and the UK. Can you share more about how you managed to pull that off?
Yeah, so when I first got into online business, I had an idea of what sort of lifestyle I wanted to live, but I didn't have an idea of like how I was going to get there. So in my head, online business was like me sitting in a cafe or sitting at home, working on my computer, writing, which is what I enjoy, and then making money somehow. I didn't know how to do it. And so that led me into various different options. So like I looked into content writing, like writing blogs. This is pre-social media. I looked into copywriting, and along that way, in my early days when I was experimenting with different ways of making money, I discovered this book called The Six Figure Erotica Writer. It was a book by, I presume it's a woman because it was like one of those pen names, but it could have been a man. And he or she had a book. Yeah, it's called Six Figure Erotica Writer, and it was basically a book that taught you how to research, come up with erotica short stories, write them, publish them on Amazon, and then make passive income just selling these like erotica stories, which are like 15, 20 page books. And the idea is that they sell for like $2, $3 on Amazon. And it's basically the market is like middle aged housewives. They buy these books and they read them when they're at the going through the checkout line at Whole Foods, or they're waiting at the dentist office. And these are like just short mini stories that they pay $2, $3 for on Amazon. And back then you could sell quite a lot of them, and then these women apparently would buy hundreds of these books, and just to pass time, right? And so I thought, all right, well that sounds easy. I could just like invent stories and sell books. Um, the idea that it was erotica didn't even occur to me as something ridiculous. I giggled at the idea, but like I was like, all right, this is easy. Like I can do it. I just need to write something on a Google Doc, upload it to Amazon, get the book cover going, and then I'm off to the races. So I did that for like I bought like a 10 pack of modafinil. I don't know if you know what that is. Like a nootropic, like a focus drug. And I locked myself in a room and I wrote erotica short stories for like I think it was around 6 months. It wasn't longer than 6 months, 6 months max. But that was like one of my early gigs and making money online.
And you were able to
And
sell
I
a
became a
bunch. Yeah.
best-selling author. Yeah, one of my books became a bestseller in the UK, and another one became a bestseller in India. I still get royalty checks for the one in India, which is really funny.
That's so
Like
cool.
$2 royalty
Are
checks.
you going to publish that on an X anytime soon? You got to give us some teasers on that. Maybe the R-rated version of the X. There's got to be
I
something with the X, with X being a platform and X-rated material you could do something with.
For sure, man. I've still got those books like on my Google Drive, and a few of my friends which I've who I've met through Twitter X, whatever you want to call it, have suggested I compile them together and sell it because now I have a big following, and a good portion of that following is like hardcore fans, so they would buy it. But I don't know. It's one thing to talk about. It's another thing to actually show the work. The funny thing is when I started tweeting about that, I immediately went and published all the books, so you can't even find them on Amazon anymore. But they're sitting on Google Drive. So maybe one day I'll re-release a special edition.
It's so interesting. Yeah, I think that'll be something fun. It's like a little Easter egg for Eddy Quan fans that I'm sure you'll bust it out at some point. I do want to go back a little bit even further than that, into like your teenage years. And I know you were a really ambitious kid, and you had, as you said, this vision of being almost like Christian Bale in American Psycho. You're like the sexy ass banker, right? And getting that really
Yeah,
prestigious job and being kind of a badass and that social prestige that comes with it. And you did that. You worked at one of the big four accounting firms, and you were very successful, but you found out that you didn't really like authority. That was an issue that you had, and it wasn't for you. And it goes to this thing that I've also heard you talk about with mimetic theory, and kind of that we desire what other people desire, and that you might have gotten caught up in that a little bit, trying to appease like family and friends. And I see it on X, right? Where like you have people, it's like, oh, 10K a month. Oh, you got to have all these clients or start an agency. And it's like, this just becomes the norm for beginners and for people that are looking to find their way. And I've even seen, really successful people like Taylor Simmons, for instance, we talked on this podcast, where like he ramped up his agency to like 70, 80K a month and he was miserable. And it's like, that's not actually the lifestyle that he wanted. And so now he's trying to readjust his life. So I'm curious, like, how do you decide like the direction to go in when you're trying to build something, and so that it's sustainable for you? What are the things that you look for?
Yeah. Excellent question. Excellent question. So you nailed a few things there that I think we can lay into. So I think the first thing you need to figure out is like you need to figure out exactly what you want. And like a lot of people don't. It sounds so simple, but a lot of people don't really. They don't think about it in like a 3D. They don't think about this question from like a, let's just say like a 3D point of view. So let's take specifically when it comes to online business. So a lot of the people on in the in our little corner of Twitter slash X, when you talk to them on online business, they're the way they define their goal is very one dimensional. It's like I want to hit a certain income level per month. So you mentioned Taylor, right? Hit 70, 80K a month, tons of money, but was miserable. So one thing I've always done that from since the beginning is like I've always been very clear in my mind about how I define my goals, and I've said this repeatedly in my content that I don't. Yes, I do look at the numbers. I do obviously track my revenue, but it's just one. It's a very small component of my overall goal. My overall goal is actually very. I'm a very visually minded person. So, like I said, when I was doing erotica writing, when I was doing an online business, my goal was not to make whatever a month, three, four, five. I mean, obviously I had a number in mind, but it was not my main goal. My main goal was to like I had a certain vision, a certain lifestyle in my mind. Like I literally imagined myself waking up without an alarm clock. I imagined myself being able to go to the gym uh, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon when there's no one there, and then not have to worry about money. I imagined myself waking up and not having a fixed schedule, but at the same time not worrying about money. So like like these are all like mental movies that I'm playing in my head, and that's how I set my goals. And I think a lot of the guys, especially on Twitter slash X, they just think, oh, I'm going to make 10K a month. I'm going to do 20K a month running an agency, but they don't really visualize what that entails. So you can run a 50K a month agency, but like, do you know what it's like to run a 50K a month agency? Are you willing to send thousands of DMs per day? Are you willing to manage 10, 20 clients? Are you ready to sit all day on your computer and like respond to clients on Telegram, on Twitter, getting text messages from clients because they're unhappy? Are you willing to do all of that? And I think they don't actually sit down and visualize what sort of lifestyle they're going to live in order to attain this revenue goal. And so like I've always set my goal from a visual standpoint. I think that's one thing that once you have that vision in your mind, then you can reverse engineer or the other little things like, okay, how much revenue do I need to make to get there? How much, what sort of work do I have to do to get there? What sort of sacrifices do I have to make to get there?
It's really hard when you don't have money to kind of say, hey, okay, money's going to be like third or fourth on the list of the things that are important. And you realize
Yeah.
that once you get it, that may not be it. And even before the money, like the way you described it with the visual and really thinking about what it entails on a day to day. I built a dating app back in 2018, like an audio dating app. And I was in love with the idea, and I still am, of this social audio, getting to connect to people through these audio only environments. And I was so bullish on the concept and excited that I went ahead, I attracted a team. We started doing live events in LA. We did all this stuff. And then I got to a point where I was like, wait, in order for me to take this now from this like proof of concept that's working to like, now I need to like raise millions in capital in VC, and I need to like hit this, get critical mass with like interesting marketing. And like, it became like very overwhelming. And I was like, wait, do I want to have like all this investor money that I'm reporting quarterly to, and I have 50 engineers? Like, if this actually works out, is that a life I actually want? And so I had to kind of change my direction. Kieran Drew was on the podcast a few weeks ago, and he talked about following your energy, right? And if you follow your energy, you're going to figure out where you're supposed to be. And you used to read Victor Pride's blog, Bold and Determined. And then I know Lawrence King also kind of his course, like how do you make $100 a day on Twitter? These kind of things kind of pushed you in a certain direction. What drew you to these two guys specifically, and how did that shape the way that you became a creator?
Okay, excellent question again. Yeah, and shout out to Victor. I don't know what he's up to these days, but so the reason why I was drawn to Victor Pride was so around 20, I think it was 2015 or 2016. That's when I started Googling how to make money online. And for the younger people listening to this podcast, there was a time when people were making online before social media got really big. Social media, at least the way it is today in terms of monetization and building brands, it really didn't become big until about 2018. So around 2016, um, the way you, the way a lot of smaller personal brands made money was they would have blogs, and so like they would start a blog around a certain topic, um, and then they would organically get traffic through Google, and then through once they got their website traffic, they would monetize by selling products on their website or affiliate products or their own products. And so Victor was like, I actually don't remember how I found his blog. I don't know if it was through looking. I think it was I was looking for information about how to make money online, and then I came across his blog, and I got sucked into the masculinity advice. So not to get too personal, but like back then, my personal life, it wasn't in shambles, but I just was not where I wanted to be. Like I was not, physically, I wasn't there. In relationships, I wasn't very good with women. I was single, um, and so I wasn't happy with my love life, and I wasn't happy with the amount of money I was making. I just wasn't happy as a man. And so Victor Pride's blog, Bold and Determined, was the only resource at that time that spoke to not just about making money online, but about just value, like raw masculine values. It sounds so basic now on X that, oh, you gotta lift weights and be disciplined. It's like it's so obvious because all the masculinity accounts talk about that. But like back then, 2016, for some reason, Victor Pryor was the only guy who was talking about that, how important it to say, hey, it's okay. Get to the gym, lift weights, eat some steak, get your body in shape, and then go make your own money. And then, when you do that, women will naturally become attracted to you because now you are a valuable man. Um, this is like basic stuff when it comes to traditional masculinity advice, but back then he was the only guy talking about it. And he did it in a way that was very raw, very direct, and very authentic. And so I was just drawn to that, man. I binge read every single blog article he put out, and so he had a big influence on me. A, because he opened my eyes up to the possibility that you can actually build a business on the internet, because he was actually doing it live in front of us by talking about masculinity. In terms of Lawrence, I joined Twitter. I mean, I've had a Twitter account since it started, dude, since like 2010, but I didn't really see how people were monetizing until about 2018. And so in 2018 to 2019, I was kind of just a lurker on Twitter. I was seeing guys like Ed Lattimore and Alexander Cortez grow and monetize, but I didn't know how they were doing it, and I never thought that I would have a chance because I thought, well, you have to be this like, way out there personality like Alexander Cortez to do this successfully. And then Lawrence was the first guy who was just like, hey, anyone can do this. You know, I started following Lawrence when he had, I think, 700 followers, and he put out a course, as you said, how to make $100 per day online, per day from Twitter. And back then I was like, yeah, I was doing freelancing. Sorry, I was doing freelancing, and we can talk about that later. But like, I didn't really think about building my own audience until Lawrence put out that course. And so like Lawrence just kind of like opened up my opportunity, um, open up the possibility that I could build an audience, my own audience online, and sell my own products. Before that, I didn't even think about it.
It's funny how you found him when he only had 700 followers. And I looked and you guys have like, you're within like 400 followers of each other right now. You're both like, I think he has like I can't exactly remember the number. It was like you're at 150, 1.3 or something, and he's at 152 point. Like you're like right next to each other. So you kind of called him as an interesting creator in a way by getting attracted to his content and then obviously doing it yourself. And you put out a thread yesterday that went super viral with your 25 tips to build an audience on X, even if you have 0 followers. So going back to those early days, you're reflecting on some of these things that you can do, and especially, bringing it to today's environment. What were some of your favorite things that you put on that list that maybe some beginner creators that are listening can figure out, can implement, that are maybe some of the more high leverage ones?
Yeah, great question. So on the surface, it seems like Twitter X has changed a lot since 2019, since I started at the end of 2019. But really, the fundamentals, the framework of it has not changed. So if you're starting from 0 followers, the first thing you have to understand that is that the logical thing that most people think about is like, oh, I'm going to start with 0 followers. I just need to make the best content in the world. I need to figure out how to make viral content, and then I'm going to get followers. I'm going to get engagement. That's not how it works. If you have 0 followers, you're getting 0 impressions. So it doesn't matter if you have the world's best content, no one's seeing that content. You're literally tweeting at the brick wall. So one of the things I learned very, very early on, which still works to this day, is what you want to do is you want to, what I call, siphon followers from bigger accounts. And so like if you have an account and you are in the health space, I always use the health space because it's just everyone relates to that. And you are a fitness coach and you help women lose weight. Let's just say you help middle-aged women lose weight. What you want to do is you want to find accounts who already have that audience that you want to have, and you want to engage heavily underneath your tweets or posts. What's going to happen there is if you leave interesting comments consistently under those posts, the people who follow those accounts will eventually see your profile and follow you back. Okay. I learned this very early on because I remember like one of the accounts I really fell in love with early in the day was Naval Ravikant's account, and Naval's got like whatever, 1 million followers now. Back then he had a lot less. Um, One day, Naval Ravikant just happened to be tweeting live, and I just happened to be online, and I was one of the first people to comment on this particular tweet. And I left a very nuanced comment. I don't even remember the tweet or the comment, but I think I picked up like 100 followers just by commenting on that tweet. And like I said, I got lucky because he just happened to be online at the same time I was online, and I was one of the first people to comment on it. But because I picked up so many followers from that one comment, that kind of like woke me up like, oh, okay, well, I need to be commenting underneath larger accounts. And so that's what I did like for the first few months. I thought I got my first few thousand followers. I just made a list of my favorite creators. So guys like Lawrence, um, I put them all on a private list, and then I would just engage with all of their comments, all of their posts every single day. But here's the key. Like I always approached it from like a value giving perspective. Like I always gave really interesting comments, or I tried to give interesting comments, and I tried to keep it real. I would never do things like, you know, what most people do, which is try and just rewrite the original post in your own words. No, the mindset you want to have is like, okay, if this person, uh, if I were having a one-on-one conversation with this person in a bar, and the tweet that they posted, that was something they actually said, how would I respond to that? That's how I think about it. And what I'm trying to do is when I'm commenting is like I'm trying to keep the conversation going. And that's what I tell my clients. It's like if you want to be good at commenting, you want to just approach it as if you were having a live conversation with that person. And once you do that, if you do this consistently, you will pick up a few thousand followers. You know what's funny about that question? Like, I was listening to a massive space from these mega X creators the other night. One of them was this guy called Declaration of Memes. I don't know if you've seen him on X. He's got like a 500,000 following, and this he gave the exact same advice to that exact same question. So just focusing on commenting and replying underneath larger accounts, and you will grow a following very quickly.
Yo, guys, real quick, if you're enjoying the Louder podcast, you're going to love Louder Spaces. Every week, twice a week, I host spaces on X unlike any other spaces you've heard before. We've created a real audio experience and bring in big, influential accounts to discuss topics around personal brand, content, and monetization. We use custom AI audio, react to clips from other podcasts and videos, and we have what's called Amplify, where we bring audience members on stage and everyone in the room likes, comments, and retweets their content and gets them tons of exposure. You could be the next person we blow up. Just come by Louder Spaces every Wednesday and Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern. Follow me on X at GregLunt27. See you there. Yeah, and I think the key point that you make there is most people, they set up for, they set their notifications or whatever, and then they go in and they just rephrase the tweet as like they're some smart person now because, oh, great, you understand what he said and you can reword it. That doesn't actually attract new people to you because you're not saying anything original. Virgil talks about this where, he's done a really good job growing through commenting, and he's always thinking about how can I literally like tell a valuable story that builds upon what they said that's actually relatable to me, right? And my experience, and that's what attracts people. Oh, this guy's kind of interesting. Boom, click follow, right? And so when you were first just getting started, you mentioned how you were lurking a little bit from 18 to 19. I went back and I looked for your first tweet. It was actually October 29th, 2019, right? So you're about a year and a half on Twitter and you hadn't tweeted, but you finally put one out and it said, all millennials need to be stripped of their iPhones and dropped into a poor foreign country for 6 months. Trust me, you'll get a more valuable education than the one at Harvard Business School. So I know you've lived in Malaysia, Papua New Guinea, Australia. Now you're in Colombia. I'm sure there's been other places as well. How has living abroad made you a more well-rounded creator?
Dude, what a great first tweet. Sorry to like toot my own horn, but like that is a hell of a opening tweet. Better than drink water. So I was questioning, what have I learned so far from living abroad?
Yeah, how has it made you a better creator? Obviously a better person, but specifically as a content creator, how has it impacted you and taught you things?
Well, as a content creator, the most obvious thing is it's just given me a variety of experiences that I never would have experienced had I just stayed in one country in the same say in the same town, doing the same thing as everyone else, right? Because here's the thing about content creation, right? It's like it's really just being able to live an interesting life, do interesting things, and then that's step one. But step two is like being a really good observer. And I learned this from all of my favorite artists growing up, all my favorite filmmakers, all my favorite novelists. They're all just keen observers of human nature. And so that's how I've always approached my life. I've always just been very curious, and I've always been very observant about little things that happen around me. And so when you extrapolate that skill set to a bunch of different environments, as you say, I grew up, I was born in Malaysia. I grew up in Malaysia, Papua New Guinea, Australia. So that, living those three different countries gave me a lot of experiences, a lot of different contexts, a lot of different lessons. And then now I live in Colombia. Having traveled the world as well. On top of that, like I just have so many different experiences just by exposing myself to so many different environments that I can take and turn into content. And like obviously, like living in all those different countries, and learning about how different the world is and how different cultures are, it's taught me a lot. Not just about content creating, but just about life in general.
Yeah. And you talk about kind of like being very observant. It all goes to storytelling, right? And it's like
Yeah.
if you are able to notice little things about human nature and about your experiences, you can then turn that into content. And you see it with like a lot of
Yep.
comedians. They're the most observant people, and then they can translate those stories and find the humor in them. And storytelling is obviously a big part of tweeting. And your tweets, they feel very informal. Like it really feels like you're just talking to me as a friend. And a lot of people struggle with that. My buddy NFT God always talks about you should tweet like you text message, right? And I'm
Good
curious
analogy.
for you, like in your process, is there like what is the balance that you have between highly polished tweets that maybe you're editing or even scheduling versus just firing from the hip?
Yeah, excellent question. So, to be completely honest, to be completely fair, when I first started tweeting, like growing my account, um, I had a very business like approach to growing the account. So like I always knew it from the get go that I'm here to build a business. Like this Twitter account to me is a business, and I'm going to approach it as a business. And so like I'm going to treat tweet writing as a skill set. So you know the way you learn any skill is by you start by imitating, right? It's the same thing with learning how to ride a bike. You don't know how to ride a bike. Okay, cool. I'm going to watch how dad does it, and then I'm going to try and imitate him, and then eventually I'll figure it out, and then I'll do it my own way. And so that's how I learned tweet writing, man. Like I just looked around and said, okay, who's putting out content that I enjoy? So we've talked about Lawrence before. I forgot to mention this before, but like one of the reasons why I was drawn to Lawrence's content was that it was very personal. Lots of humor in there. He's got that whole British thing going for him, that dry sense of humor. Um, and so he was at least back then, he was the only guy that was like injecting a lot of personality to his tweets. And so like at the beginning, I used to like try and imitate his writing style with my tweets. And, and to be honest, I tried to imitate a lot of different like creators. And for a while, it worked for me. Like I was getting really good engagement. I was getting a lot of likes. But then somewhere along the way, even though I was having a lot of engagement success, I felt I don't say like I wouldn't say fraud because that's a big word. I didn't feel like a fraud, but I felt that the content I was putting out was not authentic, and that's when I started incorporating more like personal content. And there was really there really isn't a process. Like I know it sounds kind of basic, but you really just have to practice and force yourself to every time you have an idea, every time you have a thought, just tweet it out. It's gonna sound really messy, but you kind of just have to do it. And over time, as you force yourself to do this, you will eventually find your voice, as they say.
Do you ever like go back and delete tweets? Like you'll put something out and then either for like what you said, or maybe it doesn't have as good engagement and you don't like the way that it looks on the timeline. Like, are those things that you consider, or do you just, when you put something out, it's just out there?
I used to delete a lot. So there was a time before they invented the for you column on X, where if you shot out a tweet, you would know within 2 minutes whether it's going to do well or not. Now it's not so much the case. Now if you put out a post, it might be the case that it doesn't get a lot of engagement in the first couple of hours, and then it picks up overnight. That never used to happen. So like, it used to be a lot more predictable. And so back, I would say a year and a half, 2 years ago, I would if a tweet sucked within like 5 minutes, I would delete it for sure. And there's probably been a couple of times where I've just said something that I kind of cringe at myself, like, oh, it doesn't feel right, I'll just delete it. But yeah, for sure, I've definitely gone back and deleted some content. Like, but lately I haven't really done that much. Like lately, I've just been whatever. If it sucks, I'll just leave it there.
Yeah, you seem like you're really in the zone right now. It's really cool to watch. You talk about like feeling not like a fraud. I forget what the word you use, but just like a little inauthentic, maybe, um,
Yep.
or even. I think the better point is the imitation part of it. I think that that's really
Yeah.
important. I remember back to when I first started podcasting. It was really like I wasn't marketing it. It was a very much a private podcast, but this is kind of cool. Actually, a little fun story is so I had this podcast that I did as like an audio diary, and I was basically chronicling week to week, basically what I was going through, business wise, personal wise. I was really discovering myself and sharing those thoughts on a 5 to 30 minute recording on a weekly basis, and nobody listened. Maybe like 5 people, right? And recently, now that I'm getting a little bit of an audience and I'm this like spaces guy or whatever, I've been throwing up these pop-up spaces. And a few nights ago, spent literally like 5 or 6 hours just playing old podcast episodes from me like 6 years ago talking about like social audio, talking about the things I'm talking about now, talking about like what I was going through and how I was building and where I was, what we were trying. And I had like 30, 40, 50 people in there just like listening with me. And I realized that, and I even talked about it a little bit, was I was trying to be Bill Burr, like in those early episodes, because I was really influenced by his Monday morning podcast. I was trying to be like a comic and stuff. And it actually kind of like was funny, but I remember feeling like I'm trying too hard, and just being myself ended up being the best content, I think, at the end of the day. And it helped me as a creator find my voice, which now I'm leveraging in the spaces and in this podcast and just everywhere else. And for you, I know, like, the watermelon thing, right? This is something that's really authentic to you, and you've leaned into it really heavily, and it's become a central part of your brand. And what's the thought process there with having an inside joke with your community, and how does that help your personal brand?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, man. So like the watermelon, that was actually it was a bit of an epiphany for me, man. So I was I don't know what was the trigger event that caused me to tweet about watermelon, but like there was some it was one particular day where I was just thinking, man, like I need to just put out more of my personality. It just like this whole content thing started clicking for me. I basically came to the conclusion that if you just put out and highlight certain aspects of your personality that makes you relatable, makes you likable, and you just repeat that and you turn into a meme, it's impossible to not grow an audience. And I don't know why I picked watermelon, but like watermelon, it's always been my favorite fruit. Like when I go visit my mom, for example, she always has watermelon like diced up for me because she knows that I love it. And so I just happened to be eating watermelon, and I tweeted out a photo of it from my balcony, and it did really well. And I was like, oh, I'll just play, this is going to be a fun little experiment. I'll just start tweeting about watermelon. Um, and like every time I tweet about watermelon, like my followers would love it. Like now I it's like a ridiculous inside joke where everything I tweet about, like some I get at least one comment relating whatever I tweeted to watermelon. Um, and so that I think by putting myself out there in terms of like just talking about watermelon, it gave me permission to be more of myself on the timeline. And I think that's why you're seeing, as you said a few minutes ago, like the shift in my vibe and my energy. It's because like it's something just clicked. Like okay, cool. You just have to just be yourself and just have the confidence to put yourself out there. Because I think a lot of people don't realize it does take time and some confidence to put yourself out there. Like I guess that depends on your personality type, but for me at least, I'm a very reserved guy, and so for me to like put myself out there, it's not an easy thing to do. Took me a while to get used to it.
It's usually the people that are the more introverted. Once they finally shift into sharing, it's like they're the ones that it's like, I really connect with that person, because you have all these ideas and you're maybe even judging yourself about what are people going to think or whatever. But it turns out those are the most interesting and the most relatable ideas. And you put those out there, you really build that connection, and you have that interesting kind of weaving like thread through your content. And there's a lot of ways to do it, right? You see, you're doing it with watermelon, which is pretty much like a universally loved fruit. So everyone's going to all like talk about it. But you also have like the Dakota Robertson, where it's like pineapple pizza is a little more controversial, right? It's like some people
Yeah,
hate it, some people love it. And then you have Kieran, where it's just like totally a joke. I have an OnlyFans, all
yeah,
that stuff. So there's
yeah,
a lot of different ways, but if you just have that, like that thing, it can really help increase engagement and help you just like make light of, anything else, any other situation. And
yeah,
again, that kind of goes back to like, X is a really, I think, especially Money X is a really positive place. And I actually heard you say on a podcast, on Money X, well, I guess you said Twitter at the time. I like that you can just be positive and not get any pushback. And that's not really like how it is in real life, where, I have friends from high school and stuff. I remember when I was starting my self-development journey, maybe like 10 years ago now, and they were looking at me crazy when I was talking about, hey, like, you're not your thoughts. Like, there's a gap in awareness. And like, what the fuck are you talking about? Um, and now that's like normal, like be present and all that stuff is kind of like, it's been Instagramified, and and for the, and, rightfully so. But the downside of maybe having that environment where you can, be in such a positive place and be around people that are doing cool things, is you get kind of addicted to it. I know I have, and that can lead to burnout. And I also heard you say like being on Twitter is like taking steroids for your mind. And that can lead to like, it just gets you like a little, you need to take a step back. And you were using like app timers at one point to cut you off. How do you manage your social media usage now? Do you still think about that? Is that something that you manage daily?
Yeah, I don't have like a system that I've consistently stuck with. But I will tell you what's been working for me lately, and it's something that I came to the conclusion with this year. So when you spend excessive time on social media, like it's really important that you remove yourself completely every few months. So like one thing I've been telling a lot of my creator friends is that every 4 to 6 weeks, schedule something in your calendar to take a mini vacation. And by mini vacation, this could literally be 2 nights in a five-star hotel with your wife, or like spending one night go camping with your family, or just go somewhere and do something for like one night or 2 nights or whatever. It doesn't matter. Just something that allows you to remove yourself completely and just take a break, because when um, when you're online 24/7, you get into this weird headspace where the digital world feels so real that you feel like a prisoner of your own thoughts. And I think that sounds really, I know it sounds kind of crazy, but that's something I've experienced at least 2 or 3 times to the point where I felt burnt out. Um, I think in I, I I think it was 2021. I was so obsessed with Twitter, and I was spending so much time online that I was getting no ideas for content. The reason why I was getting no ideas for content was because all of my feedback loops, all of the content I was consuming, was from the same platform I was trying to create content on, and that's a horrible place to be in, because now you become what I call a copy paster. Like you're just regurgitating, even if you're not like word for word copying or like using specific templates, you have no interesting thoughts because all of your thoughts are coming from the same place, and so like it's just like the same thing going in and out. It'd be like eating your own shit. You know what I'm saying? Like it'd be like eating your own shit and then like digesting and eating it again. It makes no sense. You have to get your nutrients from somewhere else, and so my engagement took a dive because it was 3 to 6 months where I was just like, I really don't give a shit about this. Like I'm just not interested. I'm tired of this stuff, and everything went down. My income went down. My engagement went down. I didn't care. I was just like, oh, I'm just gonna go live my life and I'll figure it out. And then what I realized was like all I needed was just a vacation. Like after taking a couple of weeks, going off in nature, going to the beach, whatever, like I felt revitalized. My creativity was back, and and I came back to the platform with like so many more ideas, and I just started creating like crazy. And that's the same thing that's been happening to me recently. Like I took a vacation, I think about 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, to the mountains here in Colombia. I went and just like rented this nice little hotel, eco hotel thing in the mountainside, and I spent the entire day just bird watching, drinking coffee, reading books. Like I didn't do anything special, but like I just rested my brain, and I came back with like so much creative energy. It was like it was as if I was starting an account from scratch and being really excited about it.
I think I need to take that advice. I'm so deep in the weeds right now, and there's so
Oh,
many
dude.
things that I feel like I need to do, and I think that's probably not the best place to be creating from. So yeah, I got to think about that and different ways that I can just separate and go do something fun. And but outside of X, you're very passionate and successful with your email, and that's something that you talk a lot about. Am fully on board with this idea that email is something everybody needs to be building. The sooner the better. It's a huge part of what you're doing. You tell great stories, you help people grow, and you do a lot of selling in there, and getting ready, hyping people up to sell, or like training them almost to click, right? So I'm curious, like with regards to that and your email in general, like what are some things that you think you're doing differently than a lot of other email newsletters that are working for you? And then maybe if you could share like a tip for beginners and or a tip for some of the more advanced people that already have newsletters that want to take it up a notch.
Yeah. So one thing I definitely do differently from most creators on X, I think, is that I don't have a conventional newsletter format. Like to me, a newsletter is a very like, for example, Kieran. Like, Kieran has the digital. He calls his newsletter the Digital Freedom Newsletter, and he has a very particular format. Like each of his emails, it starts off there's like a small promo, and then he sets the pace. He's like, okay, in this email, I'm going to give you 3 tips on whatever, or I'm going to answer 3 questions from my audience. That's very well for him. That's a great format. I'm not saying it's a bad format, but a lot of creators do this. They have a very fixed sort of format where it's like the like for example, Tim Ferriss has the I forget what it's called, the something Friday newsletter where it's just 5 recommendations, and it's a very fixed format. I don't really have a format. My format's just like you're gonna get an email every day, and the email is going to read as if it's just your best friend sending you an email. That's how I think about it, and the reason why I do it that way is because twofold. A, it builds this relationship with my audience. Like people write to me, respond to my emails as if I wrote them the email on a one-on-one basis, even though they know I'm blasting it out to thousands of people. They respond to me as if I was corresponding with my best friend. Like they actually tell me this. So your emails feel super personal, and I do that intentionally, right? Because whenever I sit down to write an email, I pretend like I'm writing a physical letter to like my best friend. A long time ago, I heard one of the best writing tips I've ever heard from I'm gonna feel bad saying his name because like he's got a lot of negativity attached to his name. But Gavin, do you know who Gavin McInnes is? He he's like this. I think he's like a big like right wing guy now. I don't even know what he's up to these days. But he used to run Vice magazine before it became Vice Media. Like it used to be like a really grungy underground magazine. Anyway, I heard him on a podcast once, and he said the best writing advice I have for you is just write a letter to your brother, and then remove the inside jokes. And that always stuck with me, and that's how I write every single email. I try and incorporate some sort of story and some sort of lesson, and that's really it. And the reason why I write it that way is because I want my email to have a very personal feel. I don't have any fancy banners. I don't have a template like a lot of newsletters have a fixed template where it's like the banner with the name of the newsletter on top, and then they have a very clickbaity headline: 7 ways to drop 20 pounds of fat in the next 30 days, and then that's the subject line. I don't have any of that. I don't, because when I get I don't know about you, but when I get a newsletter like that, like I feel like I'm reading a newsletter from a professional publication, from like a company publication, right? Like I sign up to the Wall Street Journal's newsletter. That's how I feel as a consumer of those newsletters. Whereas like when people get an email from me, from Eddy Quan, I want them to feel as if they are getting a personal email from their best friend or their brother or their mother. I'm intentionally trying to create that environment because I know when I do that, you're more likely to open, you're more likely to read what I have to say to you, and you're more likely to absorb the lesson. And yes, you're more likely to buy from me because now you feel, you know, you feel connected on some level, right? To what I'm telling you.
Yeah. So guys, make sure you sign up for Eddy's email. That'll be in the description. It's great, great follow. And that personality content you talk about, it's so important. It's so important. And you're doing a lot more videos and you're doing a lot more spaces right now. And
Yeah.
so you're putting yourself out there in a way that is even more personal than your writing. It's your voice, it's your face. And you taking different approaches. Some of them are actionable and insightful. Some of them are a little more comedic with like doing squats with your watermelon or whatever it may be. What's your multimedia strategy right now? Like, how do you look at those complementing your writing?
Yeah. So before I answer that question, excellent question, by the way, let me just pay homage to the people who I learned this from, which is really two guys that we need to mention is Ben Settle, um, the email king, and then the other guy is the guy who influenced him. This guy called Matt Fury. I got very lucky in that I discovered in my early days when I was Googling what's copywriting, how to make money online, I discovered Ben Settle and Matt Fury. And they were the ones who opened my mind up to email. And what I really enjoyed about their emails and their marketing in general is that they really incorporate fun and personality into what they're putting out. Like when I read Ben and Matt's emails, I don't get a sense that they're running a business. I get a sense that they're just having fun. And so like I try and incorporate that into my media, as you say. Why? Because here's the thing: like a lot of people, they join the content creation game and they think, okay, the way I'm going to build an audience and build a business is that I'm just going to keep it valuable. I'm just going to give out value. I'm going to give out the best value that my competitors don't give because I'm this great guy and I'm here to be of use to my society, um, to my community, whatever, right? But really, that's not what people want. What people want, yes, they want value, but what they really want is to be entertained. Okay, we see this with society. Like, who's going to make more money? The guy who discovers the cure for cancer, or the guy who scores whatever 100 points in the NBA finals? Obviously, it's the guy who scores 100 points in the NBA finals because that's what's entertaining. Okay, and so what Ben talks about is what he calls infotainment, which is when you fuse valuable / educational content with entertainment, and that's really the balance I'm trying to find with my marketing and with my content, because I know that if I just give out straight value, which I can do, I'm going to bore people, even if it's well intentioned. Even if I'm there to give out, even if my intention is to help the world become a better place. I know for a fact, because I understand human nature, if I don't sprinkle in elements of entertainment, they are not going to pay attention to me, which means all of my hard work just goes down the toilet, because it's like, what's the point? If you're not even going to consume my content, then um, then like I'm not being useful to you anyway. So like what we want to do is find that balance of like infotainment, where I get you in the door with some entertainment, right? Some watermelon, and then I feed you the value, right? It's kind of like making sure you have that balance. That way you get the audience, but then you also deliver them value. And so
Yeah.
that's the balance I've been trying to find lately.
Yeah, yeah, and it's a lot easier, almost whatever your goal is. It's easier to portray what you're trying to get across, I think, through voice and through video, because it's just, and especially, you're a good speaker, you're comfortable, so you just are able to express it, and then it comes out. If you're trying to be entertaining, it's easier to be entertaining, I think, through just speaking and laughing and making videos than it is through writing. It's not that you can't do it, it's just, I think it's easier. And same with giving value and becoming an authority. When people hear you, they're like, oh, okay, this guy speaks with confidence and with command, versus like with writing, it's like, oh, you could have just used chat gpt. So like, to have that sprinkled in, as putting yourself out there with your voice, something I talk a lot about, I think it's really important. um, you know and you're working on this video course now, where you're going to, I'm sure, be infusing all these different things together, and it helps people build their audience. What I'm curious about is, there's a lot of like growth courses out there and audience building courses. So how are you thinking about positioning in what is, I don't want to say a crowded market, but definitely there's a lot of potential solutions for people. And again, I probably leans back on like, it's me, it's my personality. You're selling more to the person, but how are you like positioning yourself to be able to sell with a product that might be available elsewhere?
Yeah. So this is an excellent question, because this highlights one of the most important marketing lessons you can learn. And again, I have to pay homage to the people I learned from. So like, uh, he didn't invent this, but the guy who really nailed this and drilled this into my brain is George Ten, who runs the Grammar Hippie account on X. In my opinion, one of the best copywriters you can learn from. Um, he talks about market sophistication levels. So market sophistication is when, as you say, in your market, when your market is flooded with so many different solutions that all sound the same, the best way you sell your offer is to differentiate yourself. right? And so right now, what's saturated? Audience growth. Even I would even argue personal branding is now a saturated term. And so I'm struggling, but here's what's interesting: like the principles, the frameworks of what you're teaching, it's all the same because like how you grow an audience on X, on Instagram, or whatever, it's the same framework, it's the same fundamentals, but the way we package it up is what makes it unique. So it's not going to be around audience growth and personal branding. I already know that. I've already eliminated those two terms. I think I'm going to position it somewhere around how do you build your own universe? How do you build your own world and invite people into that world? I'm not going to say world building because that's something that Ben Solo talks about a lot, but like I'm going to show people how to essentially build their own universe and then have people come to them rather than like trying to build an audience and chase followers and build your personal brand because those terms like people are getting bored of that. Everyone knows like I gotta build my brand, I gotta build my audience, I gotta get my followers. Everyone's like focused on that. So like whatever it is I release and it should be ready soon, I'm gonna position it around something to do with building your own universe, something like that.
I like that. That actually resonated with me right when you said it because again, it's authentic to you because you've actually done that. It's like
Mm-hmm.
it feels like when I read your content, there is like your own little universe. And I will lean back again to that watermelon thing. It's
Yeah,
like you just do, it feels like you just do whatever you want and people resonate. And it's like, I want that. And so
yeah,
you're like, hey, I can build you your own universe. That actually seems pretty cool. Um, I admire the way that you've attacked this space for so long. I watched some old interviews with you, and you're saying a lot of the same things. You're very consistent. You're an OG. I respect you. I respect your content. I'm really grateful that you came on the show and spent some time with me and my audience today. Would love for you to, you know, roll out the red carpet for you, as Sean Evans says, and anything you want to talk about or leave the audience with maybe a little piece of information. Obviously, I'm going to link your email and your course information as it comes out down in the description, but would love to give you the final word.
no, first of all, appreciate you, Greg, for the invitation. This hour flew by, man. Like, it feels like we've been talking for 15 minutes, so that's always a good sign. Yeah, the best thing is to if you want to learn more about me and hear more from me is just to join my email list, which, as Greg said, the link is in the description. Join.eddyquan.com. I'm going to be releasing a new course soon that's going to help you build your own little universe on X, and it's going to be completely free. So, but the people who are going to get the early copy are going to be the people on the email list. So, if you want to get a head start in building your own universe on X, join my email list, and then you'll hear from me soon.
Awesome, man. Thanks again. I really, really appreciate you. And thank you for coming on the show.
Cheers, Greg.